r/AskReddit. What's the rudest thing a guest has ever done in your home? My grandpa was visiting us for a day and I was ill. Had fever and all, so I was in bed, resting. After we all ate lunch, I crawled back into my bed 5 minutes later. He came into my room, kicked me out of my bed, and started to have a nap. My mom came to my room to check on me few minutes later. She found me laying on the floor next to bed and kicked him out of my bed, told him to leave. I was like 10 years old then. Edit. Never thought I'd get this much response. Someone mentioned about dominance and yes, you're exactly right. My grandpa is useless, but believes men runs the world. My grandma only had 2 daughters, and he was pissed. Eldest sibling is always the best, but my mom, youngest, being brighter than the eldest, pissed him off. Then my mom had me, daughter, and my little brother. He was pissed with my arrival, but ecstatic with my brother. He tried to control my brother, but he couldn't, because he was growing old and my parents and grandma interfered with it constantly. I was weaker than him, so I was an easy target for him. He did so much more than taking my bed, like he tried to run me over with his car, but that's another story for another time. Edit 2. Couple of people asked about the car story, so here I go. TLDR. My grandpa was driving and sped up, braked in front of me in a mall parking lot as a joke. One day he took me to shopping, and it was extremely boring for me, because he only shopped for himself, and he made me carry everything he bought. Once we got back to his car, he had me put everything away in the trunk, and as soon as I closed the trunk, he drove away. WTF. I was confused, didn't know what to do, so I just stood there, lost. But he came back few minutes later, laughing and saying, "You didn't really think I'd leave you, did you?" I was upset but happy he came back, so I reached for the door, and I missed, because he moved the car forward. He did that few more times and drove away, again. WTF-2. I was crying at this point. Then I spotted something on the ground. It was my Angel Pocket, Polly Pocket. I must have dropped it while I was chasing the car. I started to walk toward it, and I saw him coming this way. Next moment my butt was on the ground and the car stopped right in front of me with loud screech. He sped up and braked to scare me. I sure was scared, alright. I thought he was going to run me over. I was crying uncontrollably. He told me to shut up and get in. As we were leaving the parking lot, he said, "You're no fun. It was just a joke." I sure had fun. My grandpa is an ass. Posted this before. I was a kid, probably 9 or 10, and my mom had a friend and her son over for lunch. The kid disappeared for about 10 minutes, and at the time I thought he had gone to the bathroom cause I really had to go. So when he came back I quickly maneuvered my way past him into the room before the bathroom, where we had a fish tank. This would be completely irrelevant if the fish tank wasn't cloudy and swirling about. At first glance I didn't know what it was until I noticed smashed and ripped apart pieces of little fish faces moving around in the swirl. The kid reached into the fish tank and squeezed the ever-loving life out of every single fish in that tank. Edit. Typus. Update 1. Ended up speaking with my mother anyway, and when I reminded her of it, she said she would have to call me back after she thought about it. After talking it over with my father, they determined the date at which they had the fish tank in that room as 1985, because it was remodeled shortly after. It was 3 large fancy goldfish in an 8-gallon aquarium. They were laughing at all the details that came back to them. The date also means I was 8 years old, so I was close. The time frame helped her remember exactly when it happened. My mom remembers it as several women over for a birthing class. At the time my mom was a midwife and did everything baby, from breathing to delivery. One of the women had a 10 to 11-year-old boy who she kept losing track of, would keep wandering off as she put it, and ended up eventually being the culprit. He was not scolded, but rather talked to in a conversation up close and quietly. My mom said she didn't really remember much about her, the kid's mom, reaction cause I was crying, so she, my mom, was dealing with me rather than them. She, luckily, kept track of all the babies/families she helped deliver up till a certain point when she stopped midwifing in the late 80s. She also agreed to try and get the answer of what happened to the kid, if possible, after I explained Reddit wanted to know, which I also had to explain what Reddit actually was. I'm pissed just typing this, even though it has been years. Some of my wife's family came to visit. The idea was that on their way to the Smoky Mountains they would stop and visit with us for a day or two, since we seldom see each other and our house is on the way. Turns out that was total BS. They just wanted to use our house as a free hotel. Which, to a degree, is fine. I don't mind lending a room to a family member. But they were not even remotely cool about it. First, they called and asked if we could have something for them to eat, because it would be late when they arrived and had no time to stop. So I decided I would make a lasagna, since I'm kind of known for that in the family. So I spent like $60 and several hours to make 2 big pans of lasagna, since it would have to feed several people. They showed up with chic filler bags and said they had already eaten. Then they went immediately to their rooms upstairs, not to sleep, but to watch TV. TV's in the bedroom, without hardly saying a thing to us besides "Hi, how's it going?" Then in the middle of the night one of them got cold and turned the thermostat up to like 77 degrees, which means the heater and non-stop for hours and hours, and we woke up damn near in a sweat. When they woke up they asked if I normally cook breakfast. I said no, not on weekdays, because I have to go to work. They gave dejected looks, so I was like, fine, I can make breakfast. Would you guys like waffles or eggs and bacon? They said eggs, so I made a shit ton of eggs and bacon and left it for them because I had to go to work. When I got home they hadn't even touched the food I made. The kitchen was an absolute disaster because they decided they wanted waffles instead and helped themselves without even asking, dirtying every damn dish in the house and ruining my waffle iron because they left it on until it auto shut off, but by then had burned the batter until it was fused to the thing and the whole house reeked of burnt waffles for 2 days. They also clearly scratched my wife's car as they left because it was in the driveway and coincidentally had huge scratch where maroon paint had rubbed off. And guess what color their van was? I asked them about it and they said they had no idea how it got there. My little sister, 23 at the time, house and dog sat my 3 dogs for a month while my husband and I went to Europe. One of these dogs happens to be an 8-week-old puppy of hers that we adopted because she couldn't keep him after a recent breakup and move. Everything seemed to be going just fine via the FaceTime calls and almost daily texts. But it was a whole other story when we got home. There was dog piss and shit everywhere. Under the kitchen table, all over inside, and the entire surrounding area by the puppy's kennel. She apparently ran out of puppy pads and instead started using our fucking bath towels to line the kennel. Instead of washing the towels she threw them in a pile in the backyard. When she ran out of towels, she moved on to my husband's shirts that were in the laundry. She also had some guy stay with her that she allowed to smoke cigarettes in our house, including our bedroom. At one point she accidentally locked herself out, climbed through a window, and broke a lamp in the process. She also broke our vacuum in her pathetic attempt to clean up before we came home. While all of this was happening, a pipe apparently broke underground in the backyard on day 4 of our trip. It was raining heavily, so it was hard to tell, especially if you completely ignored the sound of full blast running water. And the notice that was put on our door by the city to contact them urgently. Sister took the notice, set it on the table, and never mentioned it. We came home to an $1,800 water bill on top of everything else. It was an utter disaster to come home to after a month of traveling and a full day of flying. We were fucking furious. We made her pay to replace all of our towels, have the carpets cleaned, and she paid for the puppy's food and pet insurance for a year. I didn't talk to her for quite a while after that. Edited to at, I was not expecting all these replies. Trying to answer as best I can. Little sisters is fine now. It's been 4 years. Back to who she normally was, a responsible, tidy, respectful person. This whole thing happened to coincide with an awful breakup she had after 7 years that spun her into depression and self-worth issues, paired with some heavy drinking. Our relationship is back on track, and has been, since she profusely apologized and paid up. But I had refused to speak to her for about 7 mths because of it. At the end of the day, it's just stuff. Edited again. Hey, thanks for the silver stranger. My first. Edit #3, gold. Wow. Thank you. My eldest daughter had a friend come back with her from college over the summer, and we had agreed that she was fine to stay with us over the summer break, since they both were doing summer internships locally. It was our first time meeting her, and initially she was a delight for all of about 3 days. The first thing that really got to me was that she decided that she needed to give our housekeeper specific instructions on making her bed, doing her laundry, and when she was allowed into the guest room or not. Our housekeeper is only there to feed and walk the dogs during the day because we are gone and the kids are away, and do light laundry and grocery shopping for my husband and myself only. Our kids manage their own laundry when they come home, and I clean my house on the weekends. She tried explaining this to the girl, but as my housekeeper said, she wasn't having any of that. The next thing that happened was she decided that maybe a low pay / no pay internship wasn't for her, and that she would just chill out for the summer and enjoy her vacation. I found this out by coming home early one day because I wasn't feeling well to find her and 2 guys naked in our hot tub. After hearing about the summer job being over with and her desire for a vacation, I reiterated the rules of the house and that she agreed to them on day 1. She proceeded to tell me that she's a grown damn woman and she'll get with whatever man, wherever she damn well pleases. I turned around and walked in my house and locked the doors. She was still outside with no clothes and just a towel. I scooped up her shit into a black contractor bag and threw it out on the front porch, minus our other daughter's car keys who was away at school. The girl literally had a very cushy summer with a free car, room, food and just about anything that she could have needed, as long as she worked 5 hours a day 3 days a week and followed the house rules. Instead she struggled to put her underwear on behind a shrub and walked away carrying her shit in a black garbage bag. Edit, to address a few PMs. Yes, we have surveillance equipment, and no, I will not send you a video of her putting her underwear on. Seriously, you'll need help, and unfortunately I'm not licensed to offer that type of help. My daughter and her were friends throughout several classes in school, so they were not roommates or anything. She was from out of state and managed to pick up an internship in our area, and the professor or TA got my daughter and her together in hopes of maybe helping each other out. My daughter said that she had never witnessed her act anywhere near the level of disrespect that she showed our family, or she would have never asked for her to stay. My kid was just trying to help out another broke ass college kid, as were we, when we agreed to let her stay. I didn't pay attention to what color or style her panties were. Please refer to number 1. You'll need help. I let my mom and her husband stay at my apartment during a particularly cold winter a few years ago. They were homeless heroin addicts at the time. I had put the simple rule of don't bring that home, and I would allow them to stay for the first month or so. It remained an out of sight out of mind sort of thing. Not ideal, but I didn't want to ditch my family at such a bad time. Eventually they had to screw it all up. Without going into too many details, her husband had a warrant out for his arrest. I was unaware of this at the time, so I got to be awoken at 1 in the morning to my mom busting into my bedroom to let me know that the cops were in my living room. Of course, I groggily make my way out to one of the most irritable cops I've ever met. He demands to know where he is. I don't know, I was asleep. They search around the apartment looking for him and making a general mess. About an hour later they leave. At that point I needed to be up at 4 for work, and I was too angry to even care. I went to bed. The cops ended up watching my apartment for about a month. To make matters worse, about 3 to 4 days later I hop onto my computer in the living room. I noticed that my mom had left her email open and decide to do some snooping about. Maybe not my best moment, but I come across an email chain from earlier that day about scoring some dope for later that night. I was livid. Bringing the cops into my home at horrible hours and then not holding to the only thing I asked them to do. I tried not to ask for much, and they couldn't abide by that one simple thing. I didn't ask them to quit, just don't bring it into my home. I saved some choice screenshots and called my work asking for the next day off. When they came back I told them to be gone tomorrow and they weren't welcome back. I stayed home to make sure they didn't steal anything and made sure they didn't have a key. I sure as hell wasn't happy about it, but boundaries needed to be placed. I had been dealing with their drug use for years and I wasn't going to have it continue to affect my life. As it stands now, she doesn't even know where I live anymore, and I don't plan on telling her. Not gonna happen again. Years ago an out-of-town family, mom, dad, adult daughter, invited themselves to my parents' home and stayed over the weekend. This was a former coworker of my mom's. They were not well off, and they saw this visit as a little vacation to our remote home. Without any warning, they brought their two aggressive and spoiled poodles while knowing we had a dog. We had to lock our dog in a bedroom for the duration of their stay as the other two would attack him. The dogs also peed and pooped everywhere inside the house, and the owners would simply point it out and do nothing or offer to clean it. They'd simply sit and watch my poor mom scrub the floor. At one point I was outside and the adult daughter walked over to let me know she wanted tea. I pointed out that she knew where the kitchen was and that she should feel at home and make herself a cup. She huffed, went back inside, and made a scene about how I, a young kid, was a rude and terrible host and had the audacity to suggest that she, a guest, make her own cup of tea. She refused my mom's offer to make her some, and she did not stop complaining until I got dragged in and made tea, for the first time in my life I might add. The whole thing was very strange. My parents have had many guests over the years, but never anything remotely this entitled. They were never allowed to return. Edit, should add that my parents host their friends and acquaintances a lot. They live in a touristy location, are social butterflies, and have room in the house, so people gather there for holidays, birthday parties, etc. and sleep over a lot. Over the decades that's the only occasion that stands out. People are generally well mannered and nice. I had just moved into a new house. I invited my one friend over for celebratory drinks cause hey, I just got a house. Things were going great, we were tipsy and having fun. My boyfriend was coming home, so I made her a bed on my pull-out couch. Boyfriend came home, and we all went to bed. Around 2 AM he heard rustling around. He thought nothing of it. He just assumed she was drunk and playing with the cats. I woke up around 4 AM and got a bad feeling and woke up my boyfriend. We went upstairs and noticed the bed hadn't even been touched. Pillows and blankets still folded. I turned the lights on and noticed my front door was open and all the cats were gone. Furthermore, into looking around we noticed his wallet was open and over $100 in money had been taken out. Our change bowl was empty and his box and brand new Elite's box controller was gone, as well as my laptop. She stole his medicinal marijuana and broke glasses. I called her freaking out and she said I left cause I didn't want to hear you guys having sex, which we never had, and she let my cat out to run away because she didn't like cats. She then proceeded to say my partner was a piece of shit who was cheating on me. She had never met him until that night. We called the cops. She denied stealing anything. I messaged her fiancé saying what she had done and what she had stolen. He messaged me text screenshots of her asking how much she could get for his box and box Elite controller, thus proving she did steal it. Sent all these screenshots to the cops and they went to her house a couple times and eventually find her hiding in there not answering the door on purpose. She got charged with petty theft and they found out she committed fraud against her fiancé and her dad. It was a shit show. Last summer, I was in another city doing a clinic internship and a few friends asked me if they could use my apartment to crash for a few nights during a festival that was going on back home. Being the nice person I am, I said of course and prepared everything for them. Made the beds, cleaned everything spotless, stocked the fridge with food and even stocked up my minibar for them. I told them they should feel at home at my place. They could use whatever they want, including TV, PS4, sound system, etc. The only thing I kindly ask them not to touch is my record player. It was new and super valuable to me. Talked to my landlord, who's also my neighbor and a pretty good friend, about it, and he was totally cool with it. They get there. By then I was already dosing my clinic rotation. Everything's great. Check up on them daily to see if they need anything, etc. I asked them to leave my keys with my landlord upon departure. Friend tells me he did. I come home that day with 20 missed calls from landlord. Turns out the friend didn't drop the keys off, and my landlord let himself into my place. Friend left the door unlocked, and I gave my landlord permission to do so, and almost had a heart attack upon seeing the state of my place. There was trash everywhere, cigarette butts all around. There were wet towels bunches up in every corner of every room. Some of my clothes had been taken out and thrown around. Food was left out rotting everywhere. And worst of all, they left my record player uncovered, with a record playing. And there was trash on top of the record. Landlord sent me pictures, and I was livid. He had to call in a cleaning service to sort out the mess and take all the trash out himself. I immediately contact my friend asking him WTF, and he told me they had left my apartment completely in order, making up lies that my landlord maybe caused the mess. I told him that he needed to reimburse me for the cleaning fees and all that, and that I expect him to drop off the key, which he kept. The next day, when he got back to the city I was doing my internship in, dude reschedules on me 6 times about giving back the key. Guess he was embarrassed too, but at least he ended up paying the cleaning fee. Anyway, I get back home a few weeks later and everything seems in order. I go to inspect my stuff and lo and behold, somehow they broke the stylus, cartridge, and needle on my record player. It was a really expensive model too. I cried out of frustration. That's what I get for trusting people. Needless to say, we are not friends anymore. Came for the weekend after many years apart. Had never met his wife. Wife turns out to be a disgusting, opinionated alpha bitch. They walked into the house for the first time after a long drive. Our kids meet and run excitedly into the other room. Alpha goes after them and loudly admonishes them for God knows what. My wife attempts to say that they are just having fun and are perfectly fine. She wheels around on my wife and barks. Our rules apply here too. She had been in our home for 90 seconds. This sort of barking continues for 3 days. They were sleeping in our basement, which is finished into a kind of mini apartment. All the kids' toys are down there. She goes through every toy box and shelf and removes the batteries from everything, because her kids aren't used to that kind of stimulation. Alpha interrupts playtime at 5:45 PM. In the summer, the grill is just getting hot. FFS. To put the kids, ages 8 and 5, to bed. Complains that the kids wake them up before 6. Judges us because ours are up later. Just because of this, all bedtimes were suspended. My 5-year-old is up till 10 now. Fuck you. Yells at my kid in a restaurant because kid passed a bowl of mac and cheese in front of one of her unfortunate kids. That's probably got eggs in it. He's allergic to eggs. Ooh, sorry, we didn't realize. What happens if he's exposed to eggs? Well, he might get a rash in a couple of days. My wife decides that maybe, if she has a few drinks, this tyrant might calm the fuck down. We're a couple drinks in, and they start making eyes at each other. The couple disappears for 15 minutes or so. Come back looking flushed and rumpled. My friend fucked that pig in my guest bed. Next drink in, Alpha notices that she has been drinking some kind of diet wine cooler. Starts freaking out, because it probably has artificial sweeteners. Turns red and starts making a scene. All this after the drinks and the sex. There are many other stories, but suffice it to say that we've never been so glad to see a family leave, and we haven't spoken since. Years later I can be standing in the kitchen and say, my god, what a cunt. And my wife will reply, right. You believe she removed all those batteries? My fiance and I decided to invite my friends over to our house for a night party. This was a big deal, because we had just moved in about 10 days prior, but our friends were getting married close by and none of our other friends had a place to stay after the wedding. They wanted to extend their stay overnight, and we all never get to see each other, so we figured it would be fine. They're our friends, right? My one friend A was always a snobby brat in college, but for some reason all of us still tolerated her. We graduated, got jobs, she got married, and she seemed to mellow out a ton. Seemed is the key word here. So A and her husband are staying at our house along with like 10 other of our close friends. I make a crock pot full of meatballs and a bunch of appetizers as lunch/dinner for night. I had spent $200 on bottles of champagne, and we had air mattresses and sleeping bags all over. Everyone was having a great time, except A. She comes over to me and asks me if we have any other food besides this super fattening stuff. Well, no, because we literally just started staying here 2 days ago. She says, oh, well, can you tell me where the closest Whole Foods is so I can go get something that I can actually eat? Sure, bitch. It's 5 minutes down the road. Bye. She comes back about an hour later, walks into my kitchen, and just starts pulling out pots and pans without saying a word to me. She made chicken Alfredo for herself. At this point, I honestly don't care what she's doing. I just thought it was hilarious that she made such a fuss about meatballs being so fattening, and now she just poured straight cheese all over some chicken. And she didn't clean up after herself, of course, because obviously she deserves to have a butler. It starts getting closer to dinner time, and my friends and I decided to pop some champagne a little early. So I grab a bottle and start pouring her a glass. She asks me for the bottle and says, this isn't even real champagne. It's from California. Real champagne is from Paris. You didn't even buy real champagne? Lol, but who even are you? The Duchess of Alfredo sauce. I calmly and sweetly say that it might not be Parisian champagne, but it's really fucking delicious. And it was relatively inexpensive. Not the cheapest, but I had actually asked the guy at the wine store for a recommendation and this is what he gave me. She asks me where the closest wine store is, leaves, and comes back with 10 bottles of some bougie shit. The best part? She took 8 of those bottles home with her because everyone else preferred the cheap California champagne that I had bought. Needless to say, she is not invited to my house ever again. Kind of late to the party, but here it goes. When I moved away to uni, I lived alone in a small shitty studio that I loved at the time. A year later, one of my friends from back home moved to the same city for uni, but didn't really plan her move very well, so ended up having to stay with me for a few weeks until she found a place. Wasn't thrilled, but I said okay. It went well for the first couple of weeks, but then the nightmare started. She slept on a sofa bed a few feet away from my bed, and for some reason thought it would be appropriate to furiously masturbate almost every night when she thought I had fallen asleep. Then she stopped washing dishes and all my pots ended up being caked in her burnt sauces, so I had to scrub at them for ages. Then she started meal prepping, which meant every single one of my pots were full of her food, which she didn't want to share BTW, so I didn't have anything to cook my food in. One day I came home from uni way earlier than usual and surprised her wearing my bathrobe and using my body lotion. The straw that broke the camel's back was when my boyfriend came to visit for the weekend and we were planning on going to a gig with some friends. Early that day, my friend asked if she could send a text from my phone. When we were out that evening, I looked through my phone for something and found her text. Something along the lines of, hey, my stupid roommate just asked me out to a gig with her stupid friends. Obviously I said no, but she'll be out tonight, so come over around 8 and we'll get smashed. I ran home and found her having sex in my bed with a guy who looked like a Russian bodyguard and who could probably snap my neck in two with one hand. I started screaming at them like a crazy person. The dude bolted, but the girl was screaming back at me, blaming me for being a bad host. I took her stuff and threw them out the window. We are not friends anymore. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.